life living and making a living can sometimes wear us out, grind us down, and dull our senses. So for a keen mind and a sharp contributive edge that can make it all easier and better and more productive, let's take some time to sharpen our axe. Stay with us right now for Life Talk.
Hello, I'm Gina Fitt, and you've either surfed to or purposely selected Life Talk with Bern Moses. Welcome to another in our series of ongoing verbal essays brought to you in this television format. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to be so effective in their lives? Why they seem to have power and passion and enthusiasm when they wake up in the morning, and other people seem to be discouraged and negative and struggle daily for success, for happiness in their jobs and in their relationships? Bern, we've been talking about a lot of things over the last few weeks, a formula for being more effective in our lives, skills for coping with our jobs, for being more successful in selling either a commodity or maybe even ourselves, ways for overcoming fears, ways for dealing with loss. And I understand tonight we're going to be talking about a rather new area for this show. And I was very interested when you mentioned that we're going to be talking about religion.
Because if we're going to talk about life, living, and even making a living, certainly that's a part of it, an integral part of it. I think it's an innate part, a natural part. In one of the essays, I believe it was Matters of Confidence, we make reference to this, and also I believe in Life Formula. We talked about libido, the fact that this is a primal state that demands that we be, and that you add an intellect to that, and all of a sudden it wants to have always been and to always be. And it could very well demand that there be another place than this, because where did I come from, where am I going, and we have to do that. And yet at the same time, over the centuries, thousands of years, there's been faiths developed around that have given us strength and passion and comfort and this type of thing. And yet, with the thousands of people I've had coursing through my life, when you cut down through some of the stuff and you get quiet and intimate, oftentimes they want to talk about God. They want to talk about spirituality and religion and what have you. And so we've done a lot of thinking about it. And if we can't go through this without being obvious as to what we believe and what we are, we haven't done it right. The intention is that this discussion would be generic and just observing what goes on out here and to correct perhaps some fallacies and what have you. I know that from the very beginning of time, it's been obvious when man first became cognitive. I think probably when they became conscious of the death. They prodded it and moved it, and this thing that was living no longer seems to be. And that confused people, and it frightened them, I'm sure. And so they began to wonder, what is this about? Why? Where did I come from? Where am I going? Why am I here? This type of thing. And that from the very beginning, I have to suppose that there were some people who said, don't you understand? You know what I mean? This is what that is. And I spoke to this particular entity, and of course, this is my authority. And people, unthinkingly in some cases, and not having a better solution, would say, that sounds good, I'll buy into that. And you have what might be considered a religion. Now that first relationship, that strange, innocuous relationship between ourselves and our source is always present, seems to be. But religion is the interpretation of that, knows the solution, the demystifying, if you would. People giving solutions. And that's all well and good, but after a while, someone in that group said, that's not that way at all. This is the way it is. I've been talking to God too, or this entity, and this is the way it is. And there was a group of people who said, this is cool, I like this better. And now we had two religions. And then there was, this is exponential. You understand that pretty soon those two religions, there's elements inside, which, by the way, this process is as natural as breathing in all probability, is they say, this is the way it is, and so now you got 4, then you got 16, and so on. And how many would you imagine there are in the world today? How many different religions, how many different faiths, and every single one of them is absolutely certain that they're right. You know how that is. And that can't be, that they're all right. And yet there's elements in all of them that have to be correct. Otherwise, they'd really be in a discord with the rest of the world. Some are, of course. And so, some time ago, what I tried to do in order to clarify some of this, I began to have a series of meetings that I call Search. And I did it on Sunday morning so that, a person said, I'm going to go to Search. Well, it sounded like church, so other people would leave them alone. And the idea was, it wasn't to direct, it wasn't to create a fellowship, it was just to examine, the different religious perspectives so that people could get a sense of where they were, because a lot of them weren't at all sure. And so we began to define these different relationships, and they began to pick out. Now, some of them were frightened by what they seemed to be. I mean, you could see the fear because they'd been brought up, in a certain way, and having never bought into it, hadn't formulated another idea because they were still trying to cling to and hold on to some of those things. And so here were some ideas that's kind of like, whoa, this feels good, but now, I may get zapped here. I mean, you can really see the fear. And what we did was we took various issues, social issues, family issues, and this type of thing, and we would examine them from different perspectives. Okay, and
so
then,
would you have speakers come in from
no,
different
it was just a
religions,
discussion, and we would take, for example, an issue like sex, or maybe the family, or government, or politics, whatever it happens to be, and we'd say, okay, now there's different perspectives about this. And one religious perspective is theism. That's Theism. Theism is one perspective. Then there's deism, and we'll kind of go back and explain all of these, or at least discuss them, as deism. And there's a lot of difference here, as you might suspect. And then there's pantheism. Pantheism. And I tell you, it's pretty hard to deny these people altogether when you think about it, when you start understanding what that's about. But theism and deism and pantheism, agnosticism. Agnosticism. It's a lonely kind of a place. And then atheism. These are primary ones, atheism. Now, theism, essentially, is where people have come to believe that a God, created the earth and everything that's in it, and orchestrates. In other words, God continues to exist in their daily living, and tends to punish, to reward, to admonish, maybe jealous, or whatever it happens to be. And these people will tend to perhaps pray to him to change the order of things. Like if someone is sick, they pray for health, or if there's an earthquake, please stop the earth from moving. In some cases I've seen where if the ice cream was hard, they would pray that it melt quicker. I mean, literally, I've seen little groups kind of gather around ice cream and pray. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's theism. And theism, there's a basic sense of it that says that there's a reason for everything that happens. And it's so easy to be comfortable with that everything that happens, has a reason. The fact that you and I are together on this show was somehow destined. You know what I mean? It was orchestrated by this benign or dramatic or dynamic God, however they perceive that. It does, if we're not careful, create a subjective relationship. In other words, I'm not in command here. Everything that happens to me has been dictated. Okay.
So God's in charge, and He's going to do what He's going to do,
He's going to do
regardless of me.
You're going to have to figure out why. And
my life's already planned out ahead of me, and I'm just following along this path.
Now, there's different degrees of that, and things that come into this category typically would be Christian and Muslim and Islam and some of these. They're theists because they believe there's orchestration going on, there's destiny and what have you. The deists, on the other hand, tend to believe that a God created. There's a super force, a originator, an establisher, created the world, and then became manifest as nature, as law. And those cause and effect, equal and opposite reaction, and manifest as love. And deism is an interesting thing in that they say that rather than that there's a reason for everything that happens, that there can be reason in everything that happens. And those are largely dependent upon intellect, rationale, and reason.
So it's your interpretation of the circumstances and your response that makes the difference.
Right. And that's the deist perspective. We have to be aware that in this country, we hear a lot of times, I think that's something that needs to be addressed here, a lot of times we hear that this is a Christian nation founded on Christian principles, when in truth, our founding fathers, most of them were deists. This was a movement that started in Europe because of the religious oppression. Okay, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. And these people were breaking away and wanting the freedom of thought and reason and rationale. And so the deistic perspective began. It was very unpopular and very dangerous. And there's a large chasm between these two. And then each one can go into fear postures about the other. There's no question, because it's different. You know, anytime that happens, where you get that. Another way that they would probably differ is that the theist would take a position that we are spiritual beings. We're spiritual beings temporarily encased, in a physical body. The deist, on the other hand, would probably take the position that we're physical entities, okay, with a propensity to spirituality. Okay, can you see the difference?
Meaning that we don't have a spirit? Or
No. The fact that that the spirit is a product of our intellect. Okay,
I see.
That would be a different perspective. Once again, theism is that we're a spiritual being encased in a physical body. This is a physical entity with a propensity to spirituality. That's what I touch on occasionally in order to open that door for understanding when I say that because of libido and the innate need to be, we would create a deity, okay, in order to continue, okay? Where up here, there's no question that as a matter of faith, that's what occurred. I mean, it's just a matter. There's probably more faith demanded up here, by faith alone. I mean, I know you've heard phrases like this, but theism and deism, they can live together comfortably so long as they don't get into discussions about it. If you
about
start
specifics, huh?
Yeah. This is why they say don't talk about religion in polite society. What is it? Religion and politics. And yet it's there. It's under the surface all the time. One of the things, too, that there's a tendency for, because of sibling competition, that there is a sense in the theistic environment of the sibling competition, in that each one is right, each one wants that exclusive relationship. In other words, to possess this concept, this idea, and this is mine and no other's going to work. I think it's unfortunate, but it is common out there that a lot of religions say that the other religions don't work. The only way to get to heaven or whatever it is through this way. And, and that separates people. I think it separates us. I have seen families just ripped, by different people taking different religious bents, and the families breaking up because of it. And that's terrible. I don't think that a loving God would have that intention, and yet that seems to be the consequence when we get our intellect caught up in it and what have you.
And perhaps our pride.
Exactly. But theism and deism. And pantheism, I think the American Indian was a good example of that. Because pantheism is where they believe that nature was their source. See, and there's one of the ways I put it is that spirituality is the wonder, the mystery of the relationship between self and source. Okay? Well, source, it's pretty easy to see where a pantheist could get their idea, because without a sun, and without water, and without Mother Earth, and without trees, we wouldn't exist. And so that they can see that as a source. And there's a lot of power in that, been quite prevalent throughout the history of man. Agnosticism is interesting, is that these folks just don't know. They haven't come down either way. And interestingly enough, Darwin was an agnostic. A lot of people feel that he was an atheist because he was an evolutionist. But when Darwin, I think we mentioned this when we were talking in Life Formula at one point, that when Darwin, it was in Matters of Confidence, we were talking about conscience, the fact that it's so prevalent in all mammals, humans and tigers and elephants and what have you, that there is a sense of conscience, that if that mammal violates the law of its species, does something unusual or out of the way, they will skulk away with apparent guilt. And having seen that, Darwin felt there had to be a cause for all of this. And he spelled cause with a capital C. In other words, but he didn't know, he wouldn't take a stand, but he proclaimed to be an agnostic.
That's very interesting. So he thought perhaps there was a reason or some kind of creation behind the evolution even.
Because of the order of things, it was just so phenomenal that he said cause. The atheist just has kind of divorced themselves from all of this, and they say, no, it's strictly a scientific thing. And I'm not going to sit here and say that's wrong. I mean, we don't know, you know what I mean? But the atheist has pulled away, said that there is no God, that there is an order of things. And they look to nature, and they look to intellect, and what have you. I do think, now I have known some ardent atheists, okay, who were some of the gentlest, noblest, highest integrity people you could possibly imagine. They were fulfilled and they were happy in their life and their relationships, and there was a sense of freedom about them. In some of them, not all of them. I've also noticed in a lot of atheists there's a sense of anger. There's a little frustration, and I think it's the anger that comes from acting out because of the criticism that comes from being the atheist. You know, when you declare yourself an atheist, you step outside the mainstream, okay, and you're subject to criticism and being ostracized and what have you, and so you get an in-your-face attitude about it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This is the way it is, and, you know. But I've been to a lot of organizational meetings where this was being practiced. I think a relative to this is humanism, and I've been in some humanistic environments that seem to have a lack of focus, and there's a lot of frustration and anger there. I'm not going to blame the humanism or the atheism, but our relationship to it sometimes separates us. And so we get ourselves into trouble with this. It's a fascinating thing because, my gosh, I mean, it permeates every single life on the planet. You know what I mean? And to be able to get clear as to what you might be and the direction you're going to take is the only thing that may give us the peace of mind that everyone is seeking. You know what I'm saying? I know you must have some things to add to this or questions to ask.
Well, I was thinking those are such fundamental questions. Who are we? Mm-hmm. Where do we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? It seems that there is an innate need in human beings to have a purpose. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about purpose over and over and over mm-hmm. on our program. And to not only to have a purpose, but to understand within ourselves that we have value, mm-hmm. where that value comes from, and why we need to keep on existing, mm-hmm. if that goes back to the libido that you were talking about. But it also seems apparent to me that in any one of these disciplines there are also struggles and challenges, and perhaps those beliefs create further challenge and don't especially bring peace, because mm-hmm. each of them have doctrines or disciplines that we're required to live up to. Mm-hmm. And when we don't live to those disciplines, then we are disappointed in ourselves mm-hmm. and in our actions. So I think it's really interesting to stand back and take a look at these, and also to see how much they have in common, as diverse as they may be in certain principal areas, how really similar they are in other areas. And I think the basic design of religion is to elevate man in a way that he acts within certain societal rules and values, which makes him more productive as a member of that society, which helps him to have certain responsibility and discipline over his actions and how he reacts with other people in the community. And those principles tend to be somewhat universal mm-hmm. from religion to religion.
Mm-hmm. No, there is a common theme all the way through this. I think all of the theistic religions that I've been able to explore has a foundation that God is love. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, some of them don't take the other step that love is God. Mm-hmm. A deist would tend to say, well, if God is love, then love is God, and that's how it was manifest, and would satisfy themselves in that. And love, of course, begins to get into the metaphysical, the supranatural. It's above nature. If we depend entirely on nature here, we're all going to lose. We've talked about that before, that whenever you come naturally, you get in trouble. Anwar Sadat, I remember one time, was quoted as saying that he cannot hate anybody because he is naturally committed to love. And I contested that because that is not a natural state. Now, nurturance is a natural state. In other words, in order to propagate, in other words, to maintain the species. In other words, the mother will nurture a child until it's independent, okay? But that's where it stops. Where with us, okay, it goes on, and we can love dearly people we've not even met, You know what I mean? And we can risk our lives and devote ourselves in a contributive way, and that's magnificent. And
so you're saying that's not a natural state, but a created state that
it's a
human beings
state.
Are capable of.
That's right. No, this is part of our makeup, the fact that we have the capacity to look not only inside, you know what I mean, to actually look inside of our own brain, but to actually extend our caring and our nurturance beyond our sphere of immediate influence. In other words, like, for example, there's no question in my mind, if we're talking about religion, that Jesus, for example, loved me. Therefore, it's paramount. I mean, it's easy for me to love him. You know what I'm saying? In other words, and I know that he loved me because I can love people I have never met. I can love the unborn and the generations yet to come. We have that capacity as we think about it. And then the more you practice it, the more powerful it gets. And this, I mean, to say that God is love can be very powerful. I mean, because one of the exercises we do and did in Search is to stop and think for a moment that of all the people who know you and who have varying degrees of love for you, it's not all the same. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's passing and sometimes it's ardent, but at the same time there is an accumulation of love. If you can kind of add this piece and this person's love and that person's love, you know, and add that all up, well, it'd be kind of
very powerful.
Oh, wonderful. And yet, because of who we are and the gifts that we have, now include in that all the love that exists, for example, in this community. And that would be focused on you, okay, if it understood you were there. Okay, in other words, then it gets, wow.
Well, you look at instances where someone's gotten media attention
Yep.
for some catastrophe that's happened, and the outpouring of love from all over the country.
Exactly.
The response to their need with gifts.
Highly curative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing the power that's in that.
What's interesting is to contrast that with being human with being animalistic. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was watching my cat out in the backyard, and he just was standing there over a rock, and I think he was chasing a little bug or something, and he was there for like 30 minutes. And I was thinking, he can't leave even if he gets tired of it and wants to, because he's so driven by his instinct.
Right.
And we've talked about the filial mind previously. And that same cat will chase a rubber band on a string around for hours. Now, we as human beings would say after a while, oh, this is fun, but I'm really tired of doing this. But for some reason, he keeps on doing it and doing it and doing it. Even if he's tired, he doesn't. It's almost like he doesn't have a choice.
That's what he does.
That's what he does. He's
right.
so ruled by instinct, and we contrast that with human beings. Although we are, to some degree, ruled by instinct, we do have conscious choice in the matter. But then I also look at this little animal and how much he needs love. And the minute we walk in the door, he's around our feet, purring and wanting to be held and needing that love and attention, wanting to be petted. And he doesn't do that. He doesn't feel love for other people in the community.
Right. No, it's limited, isn't it?
It's very limited. And it's based on familiarity, trust, and acceptance, and probably past experience. Again, a very reactive level of survival.
Probably in a way confined to nurturance.
How much he's nurtured.
Survival.
Yeah.
Because if you don't nurture and another can of cat food spews its little sound when they open it, he's gone. You scoot over there, because if he can get some food, because they're survival entities.
Right.
In connection with this too, love is a powerful, powerful force. Can't be denied, accentuated in theistic and deistic terms with prayer. And then fear is there. Fear. The expression, the devil made me do it? All the inappropriate actions on the planet emanate from fear. Oftentimes I felt that sin, we've heard the word sin, was actually another one of those acronyms that meant that this occurs when survival is necessary to that entity. And those, whenever that person, that entity, is in survival, they will react. Remember, we fight, flee, and freeze, and because of intellect, this can be so dramatic, but the fact is that when that person does that, they're in survival. And that survival is necessary, and so they perform, irrespective of the consequence. And maybe they didn't predetermine it, maybe they're sorry afterwards, but this is what occurred. And it emanates out of fear. People say, well, the devil made me do it. I think fear causes them to do it.
Bern, how do you explain people who consciously choose to do something destructive to another human being when they're not in a fear mode? I mean, there really is there's no reason that they have to do it. Their life isn't at stake. They have money, they have clothes, they have food, they have a place to live, they have people who love them. There's no reason that they have to do that. But
when they do that, whatever they do, are they in a love mode?
Angry. They may not. It may be just for kicks.
Right. But are they in a love mode when they do it?
Well, they're obviously not in a love mode.
Right. So therefore, they.
But what are they afraid of?
Oh, accumulation of things goes way, way back. In other words, a person after a while can get conditioned. Okay. In other words, if they've been in survival long enough, okay, and if they've had to adapt to life and its conditions and circumstances, if they have, what's some of the other ones? If they have to adapt, if they've been posturing all the time inappropriately, after a while that becomes who they are. And then you add that intellect and you've got evil. There's no question. But evil actually is I think, an accumulated fear. Okay, it's kind of like people in post-traumatic syndrome. I don't know if you've ever been around people who've been in abject fear for a long period of time.
They get callous almost. They turn their feelings off.
Well, they're dangerous to themselves and other people because anything at all could set them off. They go into deep survival and they'll react. It's like a man jumps out from behind a bush and attacks someone and rapes them and brutalizes them. It has nothing to do with that moment. And this is an accumulation of a lot of stuff. I know, I think I mentioned one time where this young couple went to prison to forgive the person that killed their daughter, and when they did, the man just broke down completely and said it was the first time anyone had ever forgiven him or said that they loved him. Gina, we've rushed through this thing. We're out of time. I just wanted to get into this and kind of touch on it and let people call us if they like. It's 1-800-661-3490. And call in, and we send you a ticket and material and what have you. And we're going to have to say goodbye right now. So my name is Bern.
Moses.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Bern.